Okay, so in this video we are going to talk about the declaration of two-dimensional arrays. And the first thing we usually learn when working with different data types is how to declare them. And by saying how to declare them, I actually mean how can we make our computer be aware that they really do exist. And that's actually very similar to working with boxes. We first need to know that these boxes do exist before we can use them and, I don't know, pack something inside of them, right? So the same goes for our lovely computers. And the first step that we have to make is to declare exactly what we are going to work with. And once we do so, the computer will first of all know that it exists, okay, that what we've created and what we want to use, it actually exists. So then we can work with it however we like and do all the things that we want to do with it. Assign, print the value to the screen, reading the inputs from the user, and whatever comes to your mind. So I hope the reason for why we need declaration is clear to you, as it already should be clear to you by this point, that's for sure. And as a quick reminder, I want to talk about the standard variables and how we use declaration for them. And basically we had some simple following syntax. So for example, we had int num and double b and char my char and whatsoever. So we had the name of the variable, which in the first line is just num. We had its type, which is integer. And basically what we have created behind the scenes is a simple box labeled as num with type int. And other examples were, as you probably can see here on the screen, is just double b, okay, so we created a variable called b, okay, that's its name, and its type is double, and char my char, and so on, right? That's how we have been working with the declaration of standard variables so far. And later on, what we've done is that we have been working and declared one-dimensional arrays, and what we've used was something like this: int grades, and in the square brackets we used just the number of elements that we wanted this array to have. So int grades of size 5 simply created us an array of integers, of 5 integers, and its name was grades. Also we can do the same for any type like double, char, and so on. And just what I want to show you guys before we move on is only how the declaration of one-dimensional array looks like, okay, behind the scenes, if we try to understand all the logic, okay, behind it. So first of all, you specify the type of the one-dimensional array. Think of it as just one row of elements. Then you specify its name, and finally you specify its size, and basically what it gives you is just a sequence, a row of elements, of uninitialized elements. We just declared them. And basically that's all what I wanted to to recap. And now we are ready to move on and to talk about how we can declare our two-dimensional arrays. So we recall that when we have been working with one-dimensional arrays, it was like just working with a single row of elements of the same type, right? Just like we've done it with the int grades, okay? So it's an array, a sequence of elements, and each element is of an integer type. And also, you do remember that we talked about that two-dimensional arrays are simply like grids of rows and columns. So if we are going to work with a grid of rows and columns, we've got to specify the size of the number of rows and the number of columns, okay? So in one-dimensional arrays, we just specified one thing, okay? So what is the length of this row? So basically, how many columns does a one-dimensional array has? And here, what we are going to specify is simply both how many rows we have and how many columns we have. And for that, whenever we declare a two-dimensional array, we will simply specify the size rows and columns, just like I said, and it will look like this. So first of all, you specify the type of the two-dimensional array, okay, just like you've done it with one-dimensional arrays. Then you specify its name, okay, so there you go. Here you have its name. Then afterwards, you specify the number of rows that we are going to use and the number of columns that we are going to use. So in the first bracket, we are going to specify the number of rows, okay, and it may be, for example, 3 rows and 4 columns, okay. So this will create a simple two-dimensional grid, okay, with 3 rows, as you can see here on the screen, and 4 columns. Pretty awesome, right? I mean, there's nothing complicated here, right? So basically, we just create the number of rows, specify the number of rows, the number of columns, and there you go. You get yourself a two-dimensional representation. And you can see the number, let's call it specified here. You can see also the numbering of each of the rows and each of the columns, okay? So it's just like an index. And the numbering here also starts from 0 up to the number of rows minus 1. So 0, 1, 2, because we have 3 rows. You can see just that we start from index 0. And the same goes for column from 0 to 3, because we have 4 columns. And regarding how we can access each of the elements and how we can work with each of the elements of this two-dimensional array, it will be pretty much similar to how we can work with one-dimensional arrays, how we have been working with one-dimensional arrays, but that's something that we will cover in the next videos, because for now I just wanted to show you how this grid, how this two-dimensional array looks like in our programming language. And basically what I wanted to say to you guys is that this declaration, okay, that we've just created, we are specifying to the computer with what exact grid we want to work. So where it will be, where it may be very useful, okay? So if you wanted to play a tic-tac-toe with someone, okay, this little nice game with X's and zeros, so in this case, you should also specify some grid, okay? It may be 3 by 3, 4 by 4, and maybe even 10 by 10. There is no problem for that, right? Because if you have memory to declare it, you can use applications to work with it. And that's just one example of where these two-dimensional arrays are useful. Also think about Excel sheets, okay? It's just the overview, the above overview of Excel sheets, but you can see if you've been working with Excels that you have rows, you have columns. It's also some sort of two-dimensional grid and two-dimensional array. And basically, there are actually a couple of cool things that you can do with Excel. So, okay, programmatically, you can just connect to it and to read it into your two-dimensional array of data and to process it using our programming language. Although in our programming language specifically that we learn in this course, it's not something that is very common, but it's important that you will know that this thing is also possible. Whew! So this is it for this video, guys. This was a super important video. I think that's a nice start and a nice and clean introduction to two-dimensional array in our C programming language. So thank you guys for watching, and let's move on.